I'm going to say about 3 words about the junior doctor's struggle. I think it's quite a remarkable feat that Jeremy Hunt has managed to radicalise the British medical profession. They're not people who I've worked with them and I have a lot of respect for them, and they're technically minded people and necessarily so, but they're not people who naturally get on buses and drive to Parliament and shout slogans of down with the government and down with Hunt. And so I think we have to give Mr. Hunt a round of applause for that. Because he has declared actually that he's not interested in any more jobs after this one. And I wonder if we can reflect just for a moment on what that means. He is aware that what he's doing is profoundly unpopular. He is aware that if British people have a religion left, that it's the National Health Service. That every single one of us, the users and providers of the National Health Service, respect it precisely because it cares for us in our hour of need, that doctors, nurses, an array of professionals, technical, specialists, intellectual researchers work together to deliver healthcare for working people. And I still remember when I started, a generation of patients who knew what it was not to have that healthcare system. And they were so profoundly grateful and humblingly respectful when they talked to me. And I didn't understand it at first, but it was precisely because they knew what it was to be, literally at death's door and have no one who would treat you and have no money to pay for medical professionals to give medicines and diagnoses and cure even very treatable diseases of their sick children and adults and have no social care. And it's sad to say that we're moving back in a direction where, again, working people will know what that means. Our government, Mr. Hunt, is absolutely committed to privatising the NHS. And it's not something that's dawned on him overnight, it's something that's happened over a 30-year period, but this period of crisis, and there has been a profound period of monopoly capitalist crisis where actually we've talked a little about the inequality of distribution of wealth, but what does it mean for the capitalist production system? It means that these tiny number of people, 62 or 80, but basically 60 odd people, who control most of the world's means of production, distribution and exchange, literally can't make a profit anymore by producing what the poor need. So it's as if they don't exist. They don't exercise any effective demand on our system. So they can be sitting there dying in the street in many countries, and they won't get food, clothing, housing, shelter. And even within our country, an increasing number of people I meet who are reliant on food banks. Millions of people, working people, who want to work, who are hard-working, who want to have pride and dignity and look after their families, are unable to do so. And increasingly, these will be the people who are marginalised. And as our health system, increasingly, we've got an internal market now. One section, the commissioners, the GP commissioning groups, will be commissioning services from providers. And whereas we're used to thinking of that as being healthcare hospitals that we know and love, well, increasingly those are being forced to act as businesses and bid in a competitive way with the private sector. And then sure enough, each one of those foundation trusts are failing. They're failing financially, they're failing to meet the targets which are set to them deliberately. So they're deliberately being set up to fail so that healthcare companies can step into the gap and offer the remainder. So it's a huge way of preying upon, of opening up this oyster of 130 billion. And of course, all of our governments claim that they increase their spending on health. But relatively speaking, our health system is totally underfunded. If we spend about 8% of our gross domestic product on health, most European countries, advanced European countries that have the will to do so, spend about 12%. So we have already got a third less than they have on healthcare, and increasingly it's less and less. And what will happen? I remember when the first private wards appeared in hospitals, even within my career and lifetime that was. And I remember saying, this is the thin end of the wedge. People used to say to me, no, this is good, because those who can afford to pay for healthcare will pay for it, and that will leave more money for all the rest of us. I said, well, that's wonderful. But I realized it was the thin edge of the wedge. And I said to them, that's not what will happen. This is being used to drive in, independent sector treatment centres. Increasing, NHS Plan 2000, 15% of the NHS had to be bid for the private sector. Now, the remaining sector, 50% will be bid for by the private sector. And it won't be long before, instead of that one private ward on a national health hospital, you have one national health ward on an overwhelming private hospital. And this is the trick that's being played in front of our eyes. The junior doctors dispute, which I'm involved in, I'm a very senior, sadly, junior doctor still. The reason that the pay and conditions of the junior doctors is being attacked, it doesn't come out of the blue. Hunt has actually declared, and if you look at Conservative Home magazine and other Tory party communications, they have declared their absolute unwillingness to compromise. They're determined to force through pay and condition cuts across the board. They thought the junior doctors would be, I think, a relatively easy nut to crack. They've been a lot tougher, and I salute my fellow junior doctors. They've done a tremendous job of resisting the imposition. But after the junior doctors, there'll be senior doctors, GPs, nurses, every allied health professional. Because if you cheapen wages, if you oppress the conditions of working people enough, it's possible to run hospitals at a greater profit. And when Serco, one of the many companies that's seeking to benefit at the moment from our NHS, came in and tried to run Cambridge Papworth Hospital, they were unable to do so at a profit, and they handed back, in fact, their loss to the state, and we picked up the tab for them. But they knew that if you cheapen wages, hey honey, if you cheapen wages across the board, you can privatise the NHS. And that is absolutely their goal. And huge healthcare companies like United Health, like, Bupa's a minor player, like the companies who financed PFI. And let's not forget that people still think that Labour Party gave us the National Health Service. I must say, it's nice that they think that. And it's good that they can see the Tories are clearly attacking it. But if you look at the work of the Labour Party in office, they've every bit been willing to do the hatchet job of monopoly capital, and we have to get rid of this fetish that we have about the Labour Party, that they're somehow going to come and rescue us from the evils of capitalism. I think the NHS is something that's good to study because it's something that everyone relates to, everyone can see immediately they're affected by it, and the market doesn't serve the interests of working people. But actually you can see the same things in housing, in healthcare, in education, throughout our country, throughout our life. Capitalism does not serve working people, and it's time for us to say capitalism doesn't serve us, and it's possible to build a different system of society. Very specifically on the role of the Labour Party introducing PFI. PFI in the NHS alone, 12 billion was raised from the private sector to fund rebuilding of hospitals, hugely inflated prices of hospitals, which we're paying back over a mortgage of 30 and 60 years, and then actually not getting the key, though they still belong to those companies. And for the 12 billion that's been raised from the private sector, we're having to give back 80 billion. It's clear to see why the NHS is in crisis. Just from that statistic alone, you don't have to look any further. But if you go beyond that, you'll see that their real dream, the dream that they've been driving towards, is to introduce an insurance-based system where you're given a basic amount of healthcare, an individual healthcare allowance you'll have. And if you exceed it, fine when you're young and fit and healthy, you just need paracetamol, go to a chemist and get it. When you're old, if you need an intensive care stay, if you were unfortunate enough to get meningitis, if you had cancer and needed a cancer treatment and a cancer operation. To be honest, if you need a laparoscopic appendectomy in the States, it costs you £27,000, you'd probably exceed your annual healthcare budget. So you would be having to get insurance, and for a huge number of people, as we've seen, just as in the world, half the world's population have as much as 62 people, so in Britain, those who are wealthy will have the right to as much healthcare as they want, and they'll get too much. And they'll have a surfeit of quacks and fraudsters who try and just take money from them for giving them unnecessary treatments and scans. And at the other end of the spectrum, you will have the vast masses of working people who will not be able to afford healthcare and will have to make the hard choices of their relatives dying. And also, Mr. Hunt can have his final job and then pension himself off into the private sector. And we must say, no, no more. We must defend our NHS to the hilt. So I'm going to say, that's all probably I want to say for now. Thank you all for joining us. I hope that those of you who aren't involved with the party will look online, have a look at our material, have a look at some of our speeches and books and seminars. We'll try and educate themselves, help to educate others about the effects of capitalism, about how it's a profoundly anti-democratic and anti-popular movement, and how we need to build a movement that really represents the interests of working people at home and abroad. And I firmly believe that if we're not the whole picture, we have an important role to play. Every person who comes, signs, joins up with us will play an important role in building that better world for tomorrow for our children, our children's children, and our children's children's children. So thank you all for coming. Long live May Day. Long live international solidarity. Hey.